Hi everyone, welcome or welcome back to Misinformation in Science and Society. Here to listen, not to judge. I'm your host Annie, and today with us we have Melanie Kornides, who is an assistant professor at the University of Pennsylvania that also studies vaccine hesitancy.
Hi,
Hi, how are you?
good. How are you, Annie?
I'm good. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, of course.
So let's get started. Could you please introduce yourself a little bit and like what you do?
Yeah, of course. I'm Dr. Melanie Kornides. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Pennsylvania. I'm in their School of Nursing. I study vaccine hesitancy, so I study what influences it and things that we can do to reduce it. Um, Before becoming a researcher, I was a nurse practitioner, so that's how I ended up at the School of Nursing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so why did you choose this career initially?
So as a nurse practitioner, I felt like I was making a difference for my individual patients. I really enjoyed seeing each individual patient and making a difference in their health, but I wanted to make a difference on a population level. So understanding what affects the health of populations. And I knew that I could do that through research. So conducting both etiologic, meaning like understanding what is cause and effect, and intervention research. So I went back to school and I got my doctoral degree in epidemiology. And that's how I sort of ended up here doing research.
Yeah, so what's like your favorite part of like what you do now?
My favorite part I would have to say is the type of research that I do. So, a lot of research is sort of tiny stepping stones, but I do clinical research that's often very practical, applied research. So it's intervention research around vaccine hesitancy, in which we're testing which interventions work, or research where we're identifying misinformation on social media.
Mhm.
So I always know that the research that we're doing can have an immediate impact, and that's probably my favorite part is knowing that what we're doing, we can put out there and other people can use it right away.
Yeah, for sure. So why do you think truth is so important and why do you think misinformation is like such a big issue right now?
Um, the reason that I think that truth is important is because it's a public health issue,
Mhm.
especially for vaccines. People are sacrificing their own health and the health of their communities because of misinformation.
Mhm.
And they're doing this because anti-vaccine groups and anti-vaccine individuals are profiting off of misinformation. And they're doing anti-vaccine groups and anti-vaccine individuals are doing this through advertising, right? So
Mhm.
when they put up things on social media, they make money off of the advertisements. And they've been doing this for a long time. And so they spread disinformation for a profit, and then well meaning individuals pick up this disinformation, think that it is actually true, and then they spread it as misinformation, right? So they have good intentions, they think that the disinformation is true, and they spread it not for profit, but as misinformation, right? So that's sort of the way that disinformation becomes misinformation and then spreads throughout communities, throughout social media. Um, so misinformation is a big issue right now because of COVID-19 for vaccines, but it's actually been around for a number of years. You can go back to like the beginning of vaccines really and find misinformation about vaccines. People have been scared of vaccines since the smallpox vaccine, since way before we even had social media. But you can go back in the US to look at the Andrew Wakefield study in 1998 in the US and the UK The Andrew Wakefield study was a study that was published about the MMR vaccine, which is the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine. He published it in the journal Lancet, which is a really prestigious medical journal. And he said basically that the MMR vaccine causes autism. Now you have to understand that already there's some vaccine hesitancy in the US and in the UK. There's probably about 10 years of vaccine hesitancy stemming from sort of a news story that had happened in the US. And Andrew Wakefield publishes this study about the vaccine and autism, and it just sort of explodes vaccine hesitancy into an even bigger deal. And so this really takes things off for vaccine hesitancy in the US. And then things get worse and worse. And then the HPV vaccine comes along 10 years later. Social media is starting to really take off. And then misinformation gets worse for vaccines in general. And HPV vaccine is a new vaccine. And it really gets hit hard by misinformation. And the anti-vaccine groups find their sort of niche with the HPV vaccine, as well as with vaccines and autism in general. And so they sort of become this profitable machine where they can make money by just putting things out there and people will click on it. And so that's sort of what I've spent a lot of time studying is what are the anti-vaccine groups saying about vaccines, and how do people react to it? Do they like it? Do they spread it? And are they vaccinating their children, or are they responding to it? Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. So would you say the worst type of misinformation is health related and medical related misinformation?
Yeah, I would. So I think that there are definitely people that buy into conspiracy theories for sure. But I think that the more in general, it's the people that believe the health related misinformation are the ones that are going to not vaccinate their children. And it's the health related misinformation that comes across as the more credible threat, right? The conspiracy theories are more sort of outlandish, just like we see with COVID vaccine. Fewer people are going to believe that the COVID vaccine puts a bot inside your body and the government is tracking you with it. But more people are going to believe that potentially the COVID vaccine affects your fertility, and therefore maybe you shouldn't get it. And it's the same with HPV vaccine or the MMR vaccine. More people are going to believe that potentially MMR vaccine causes autism. It doesn't, right? The data from that study was falsified, and the study has been retracted. But more people would believe that because of the falsified data, right? Than believe that the MMR vaccine has a bot that is tracking you, right? That just sounds so outlandish that even if they saw falsified data, they wouldn't believe it, right? So yes, the health data is a more credible threat than conspiracy theories. And so unfortunately, people are willing to believe it, especially, so this is the tricky thing, Annie, is that academia is a high pressure place. So scientists like Andrew Wakefield are under a lot of pressure to publish in really prestigious journals like Lancet. And so they will make up or falsify data, right, to get these high these studies out that look really good in these really good journals. And then they can say, look, I've published these really great studies in these really good journals, and I'm a really great scientist. And then I have all these publications out here. I'm so fantastic. And then it turns out I faked all of these data, right? Or all these papers, and then they end up getting retracted. And we see these with some of these scientists. But in the meantime, like all these people have believed this and they've ended up, hurting all of these people. So it's sort of like this like dangerous spiral that's happened with Andrew Wakefield. Like he faked these data. He's hurt all these people, but he was under this pressure from academia. So it's like sort of a catch-22. Does it make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Um, so I know you like researched on like vaccine acceptance and like more like misinformation stuff. So what would you say like in your opinion is the best way, or based on your research, I guess, the best way to like eliminate or avoid or reduce misinformation?
Yeah, so a couple of things, like definitely Google and Facebook and Twitter are doing the right thing and taking down anti-vaxxer groups and taking down misinformation.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that they're doing a great job. So one of the things that I have been doing is just like researching HPV vaccine misinformation. And so I was doing a study on HPV vaccine misinformation around the time that the COVID pandemic started. And I had pulled all of this misinformation from Twitter. And if I go back now and try to find a lot of that misinformation, Twitter has actually taken it all down. So all those tweets that I had pulled, if I go back and click on those links, they're gone. So Twitter's doing a really good job of sort of like finding the misinformation tweets and just taking them down, right?
Yeah.
So I think that is good, right? If they find misinformation, they take it down. I think that if you are out there and you see something, you can report it, right? If you see something on Instagram, if you see something on TikTok, if you see something on whatever your social media platform is, you can report it and they can look at it. And if it's misinformation, they can take it down. So that's another way that you, as a team, can help prevent misinformation. If you see something that doesn't seem right about vaccines, report it to
Uh,
the social media platform. Um, if you're talking to somebody who has some beliefs about vaccines that they don't want to get vaccinated because they have something that they said, oh, well, I don't know about the COVID vaccine. I've heard it has some health problems. The best way to deal with that is to say, oh, well, what have you heard? And then let them tell you what they've heard, and then just leave the door open for a conversation. So they can say, well, I've heard that it causes fertility problems. And you can say, oh, that's really interesting. Um, I haven't heard that, or, I'm not sure if that's true or not, but I can look into it for you. And then you can try to find like a reputable source, like the CDC, and you can send it to them to show them that it doesn't cause fertility problems. Sometimes they don't believe in the CDC as a credible source, right? And then it gets a little bit more tricky if they don't think that the CDC is a real source of information. So then maybe you need to find like a different source of information for them to show them that it doesn't cause fertility problems. So you need to be a little bit more creative, or maybe they're just not open to hearing you right then. What you don't want to do is like get into a really entrenched argument. Once you really start to argue with somebody, they're going to shut down, right? If you say, well, that's not true, it doesn't cause fertility problems, you're wrong, people shut down and they will stop listening to you. So that's sort of the worst way to deal with vaccine hesitancy, is to call someone wrong and say that their point of view is completely wrong. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you always want to sort of meet people where they are and let them tell you what they believe, and then see if you can sort of work with them in moving them a little bit towards a more reasonable point of view, right? And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you can't get them very far, but you can sort of be open to their perspective and hope that you might be able to send them more information or give them a little bit more information later, or at least revisit the conversation later if it's somebody that you know, like a family member or a friend or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, So I think that's all my questions about misinformation. So just for fun, do you have a role model?
I would say that my dean at the School of Nursing is definitely my role model. She's been in research for a long time. She does research around teens and teen health, and she's just a really great researcher. She is a really fun person, and she works really hard. So.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, do you have any advice for people, especially like teens? It can be about like information or like just in general.
Um, you know, I think that however you go about your life is um I sort of took a circuitous route in my career. So I started out in a PhD program early in my career. So I was in a PhD program and I ended up dropping out
Mhm.
and going and working for a while and then going back 10 years later and getting my PhD. So I was in a PhD program at the University of Michigan. I dropped out and then I went back and I went to Harvard. So I tell that story because it's okay to do things differently. So
Mhm.
um, my advice for teens is that is is follow your gut, I guess. Does that make
Mhm.
sense? Yeah. Is, like you're gonna have a lot of decisions to make in the next 4 or 5 years. You're gonna get to choose where to go to college, you're gonna have to choose your major, you're gonna be choosing your first job, where to live, like lots of different decisions, and it's gonna feel like a lot, right? And so just follow your gut, and I think it's all going to work out. So it's going to be exciting times for you. And I'm super excited. Like, I wish I got to live that period of my life over again. But it's going to work out great no matter what you choose to do, just like it did for me. And so
Mhm.
it'll be good no matter what.
Yeah, thank you for that. Um, so I think that'll be all for today. Thank you so much for being here again.
Yeah, you're welcome. I think this is a really cool project that you're doing. I watched some of your other videos. I think it's fantastic that you're undertaking it. It's a really important topic, and I wish you the best of luck with it.
Thank you. Thank you. All right.
Yeah,
Bye. Have a great rest of your day.
thanks. You too. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.